What's up, guys? Scottoria here to showcase a build that I've been working on the last few weeks, and I'm incredibly excited to share it with you, and that is the Spark Aura Stacker. Now, before we get too much into it, I do want to apologize that it's been a little bit since my last video. The recent snowstorms have been a nightmare on power, internet, and it's just... Anyway, we're back at it, and we're back into the grind. If you guys enjoy my video, please hit that like and subscribe button down below. I truly appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to watch this. I also have my social medias at the top. Please hit me up on Twitter, Discord, on my live streams at Scottoria. I'll have the link down below for all of those, to include my Discord server, where me and the dudes are usually hanging out and voice chat. And you guys are always welcome to pop in there and either ask questions, or honestly, if you just want to hang out and just have someone to grind PoE with, by all means. Something I do really want to stress about this build is it's not at all budget friendly. This is one of those builds that what I call a project build. Something you're always kind of building toward. You're getting the gear slowly here and there as you're getting money, as you're crafting gear for it. And that's actually what I also love about this build, because there's always something you can upgrade, whether it be new boots, new jewels. Obviously, you can see my flasks are absolute trash right now. We're still able to kill, Uber Elder while Maven's watching. It's nuts. But anyway, let's go over what we're going to be talking about. In this video, we're going to start off with our tree setups. I'm going to be showing where my build currently is on the tree and the nodes we're currently taking. And then I'm going to show you the tree that we are aiming toward and where our goal is. Then we're going to talk about the Ascendancy, the bandits we take. We're going to talk a bit about the gear, the jewels, and the importance of reduced mana reservation, the optimal flasks we want to take, and then, of course, the gems and alt quality gems we're going to be utilizing for this build. All right, so let's start off with our tree. Now, this path of building is for the build that you guys saw in that intro video. As you can see, we're pushing about 3 million Shaper DPS. Even with, I couldn't really figure out where our spark effect or our shock effect is. So even with that unchecked, we're still pushing about 2.7. I want to minimize as many check marks on the configuration portion as much as possible, so that way we can really, truly, showcase the power that is this build and survivability. But this is a tree I was actually using during that video, and this is about the deeps that we were pushing. 2.7 million is absolutely fine. As you can see, we were able to delete Minotaur, Hydra. I actually killed Uber Elder last night with Maven watching with this build at level 95. Something that I do want to emphasize is the reason why we're pushing such, I would even consider this low DPS, is all of our jewels aren't catered for DPS yet. They're pure survivability. What I mean by that is they all have increased max energy shield, and that's literally the only role that we're getting from them outside of the reduced mana reservation. So these jewels are pretty much just here to increase my survivability so I can push that end game content and survive longer. Now, let's go into the tree that we're actually going to be gearing toward and we're actually going to be, striving for. So, same setup. Something you're going to notice about this build versus the builds that were aura stacking during heist is we're not actually using voices. And if we did use voices, then we're leaning more toward the medium cluster jewels that used to have the 6% increased effective non-cursed auras. Now that those have been nerfed into the ground and the 3%, we're actually kind of leveraging the DPS we can get from the large and taking 4 of them. So as you can see here, I'll have the path of building for this down below. You can really kind of dive into it. And you can see our Shaper DPS is a lot higher now that we're at 13 million Shaper damage. And we'll get into the configuration for that here in a second. The Ascendancy we're going to be going with, obviously, Scion Ascendant. We're going to be taking Necromancer as well as Guardian. Now, during the leveling process, I actually went Inquisitor because you do get a large amount of DPS, cast speed, etc. for that, pushing through the axe in those early maps phase. And eventually you actually spec into Guardian because you get, as you can see here, 47% physical damage reduction. So that survivability aspect of it, especially being that we're only pushing about 5 to 5.2k ES, it's huge. You need as much mitigation as possible. So that Guardian node's absolutely helpful. And then Necromancer giving you the the cast speed based on the number of auras you get, and then you're also scaling that, so you're able to actually cast Spark a bunch of times. And then obviously passive skill tree points, etc., etc. So those are the Ascendancy we're going to be gearing toward. But that's something I wanted to annotate as to why we're taking Guardian for that. Now, let's go a little bit into the configuration before we get too much into the gear and stuff like that. We are taking Bandits, the 2 passive points. You could potentially squeeze out a way of taking a Lyra. However, those passive points are absolutely crucial to really be able to increase your aura effect. So I always go the 2 passive points for this. We do run inspiration charges since we do have our inspiration support. With the, what is it called? Our flask that we're using, bottled faith, they are going to be constantly on consecrated ground. You can also remove that, and as you can see, it's really not doing a whole lot for our deeps. Actually, you know what? I think it's because we have this active, and we're still going down to 10 million, which is still a crazy amount, but we'll leave that checked. And yes, we're constantly crit recently. Bleed, we're always igniting because of the implicit on our scepter, having fire damage to spells, which we'll get into when we get to the gear section. They're always chilled because most of our damage is cold damage. I actually did not check shock here because honestly, like, are we shocking? Probably a little bit, but it's not really enough to really have to check this box and, you know, try and juice this build. Like I said, we're usually on consecrated ground because of our flasks, and I'm really not checking a whole lot else. We could check these to really showcase up to the 15 mil portion because we are running aspect of the avian, but we're going to go ahead and leave those unchecked. Also, we're always on full life because we are taking CI. But this is the overall tree and the kind of setup we're gearing toward. Like I said, I'll have both of this tree setup down below in the link, in the paste bin link, as well as the paste bin for the build where my build's currently at. This is where my goal is, and then also where I'm currently. So let's get into the gear itself. Now, this is the biggest grind. So when it comes to a nebulous, this is the scepter that we're really trying to leverage most of our damage from, and that's actually why we're scaling our resistances to 90%. As you can see, it not only helps our survivability since we're such, on such low energy shield, but it also gives us more damage. So as you can see, we're getting up to 20% cold and lightning damage per 1% over 75. So that's an additional, 15 times, technically 40, because we're initially dealing lightning damage and we're converting it to cold with our Call of the Brotherhoods that have the quality to make it 48% a pop. So that's an additional 40% left over that we're not, or excuse me, 4% left over that we're not converting. But I'm sure you guys are fully aware how these work, and that's why you're essentially double dipping, right? So when you scale lightning damage, you're scaling lightning damage, which gets converted to cold, and you're also scaling that. So it's just, the scepter is absolutely a must. And the implicits we're looking for is the fire damage to spells, because we are running the Cinder Swallow, which I don't even have on my build yet, and I still haven't bought that, and I'm still able to delete all the bosses. And this will proc based off of the ignite that you're getting, the recover 1% of energy shield, etc., etc. So that kind of synergizes well with that. And then also the enchantment where you're getting increased elemental damage per 2% quality. And what I did was I hopped on the TFT Discord server, or just got an enchant for myself from the Jun safe houses, where you can get up to 28% quality on your nebulous, and you can really juice out just a little bit more damage from the scepter. Now, the shield is something that the build I'm currently working on, I still have a lot of work to do on it, and we're still pushing heavy deeps. But the goal is to get the +1 of all lightning spell skill gems, the increased effect of non-cursed auras at 10%, and then most importantly, the reduced mana reservation for socketed gems. That 15% is huge reduction in mana. We're running up to 19 auras on this build, so every little place you can squeeze out reduced mana is an absolute must, so you can go ahead and get more of those on there and really leverage as much deeps and survivability as possible. Now, the alphas howl when it comes to the enchantment. Personally, I cater toward a 15% reduced on any of my 50% auras. So if I were to get Malevolence, right? Whatever you don't put in your shield, because your shield's already getting a 15% reduced mana reservation, but you're going to have 50% auras on a different piece of gear that's not going to get that buff. So what you kind of want to do is have that enchantment on your Alpha's Howl to get that additional mana reduction. So I'm using Malevolence as an example. If I'm putting Haste, Pride, and I don't know, Grace in my shield, and that leaves Malevolence over in my scepter. The way I want to get that additional and take advantage of the mana reservation is pretty much any 15% reduced on a 50% aura is what you want as your enchantment. Now, a discipline on this one, absolutely fine. Whatever works for you. I know we have a wide range of different skills that you can actually leverage. So running, the labs constantly is really not terrible. I mean, it sucks. I hate running labs, but it's a reasonable helmet and a reasonable chance to get an enchantment that you can use on Alpha's Howl. Now, when it comes to Hands of the High Templar, this is actually something very interesting that I finally popped in my head when I was put in my gem arrangements. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about gems here in a second. Is you're wanting obviously +2 to socketed AoE gems, +2 to duration gems, and then a cherry on the cake is the curse with elemental weakness with no other curses. You might find some that have the Elo weakness and despair and temp chains or something. Being that we can only apply one curse at a time, they kind of negate each other, and it's kind of a waste of currency at that point. So you just want elemental weakness and then at least the AoE and duration. At the moment where my build's currently at, and I'm still doing enough deeps where I'm completely fine, I just at least have the +4 total, like the +2 duration, +2 AoE. Now, the reason why we're taking advantage of the duration is when we have Val Discipline, the Val portion of it turns that gem into having a duration tag. So then we're actually able to get +4 levels on it, which gives us that survivability, and which gives us a little bit more energy shield. Now, before you have all the gear and you're in that kind of awkward phase where you can't quite hit the 90% max res on your, cold and lightning, which would be the most important ones, you can actually get Val impurity of ice and Val impurity of lightning, where you can then actually put those in the gloves too to get the, with the Val tag on there is going to also give the duration tag, which can level those gems up a lot higher and will actually allow you to get those levels and hit the 90% mark where you're not only getting more survivability, but you're also getting a lot more deeps out of it too. So that's something very important I want to put in there in case I forget when we go over our gems as to like where you're arranging and where you're putting stuff. Now going into the Call of the Brotherhoods, this is one of those places where you don't have enough socket space to put 19 auras. So every single place that you can actually get more Grant's level X aura skill is absolutely money for you. And getting the implicit of Wrath, I think, so the possible implicits that benefit you are Wrath, Zealotry, and Hatred. Now, these are very expensive rings, especially having quality on them, because you want the 48% of lightning damage converted to cold. That conversion is going to allow you to really leverage that double dipping you're doing. So it's very important to do that. Where my build currently is at, I only have one of the rings that has the implicit I need, as I can actually show you right now since we have it up. I do have the Wrath on here, which I was able to craft with Call of the Brotherhoods. At the time when I bought these were like 10 chaos a pop for a non-corrupted. I would buy like 20 of these. I'd quality all of them and then just go through and just corrupt them. I wouldn't even wait for the double corrupt chamber. I have a couple I have on the side for whenever I do get it, because that's the optimal way. You can get like Wrath skill and then also like increased effect of something. But honestly, corrupting is like, that's how I got this one. And then that's also how I got this one. Now, this one isn't a Grant's level. And like what I would like is Grant's level, Zealotry or Hatred or something. Because what that's going to do is that's going to open up a gem socket. And that's going to allow me to put Empower linked to my Discipline, which is going to give me even more ES. And it should put me about 5.5k ES instead of just the 5k mark I'm at right now. So that's where you kind of want to be at with the Call of the Brotherhoods. We actually run Darkness Enthroned because that gives us 2 more jewels that have the reduced mana reservation, as well as it's also giving us even more crit multiplier. Now, crit multiplier is what we're going to be scaling and getting a lot of DPS from, especially when it comes to the Cobalt jewels. Pretty much every single jewel you have outside of the Watcher's Eye here, which even then, if you can get reduced mana on a great Watcher's Eye, that's something else you can upgrade. But you need reduced mana on pretty much all of your Cobalts, to include your uniques, which is Conjurer's Efficacy, Hazardous Research, Might of the Meek, etc. Those are going to be expensive, like really expensive, especially something like Intuitive Leap, which I believe is about 20x right now. To include Might of the Meek, I think it's around 20 also. Prices are continually going up. And like I said, guys, this is a project build. It's not something that you can just willy-nilly, unless you have a bunch of money just to throw at it. And then, of course, our Flasks, which are Bottled Faith and Sinner Swallow and its series Promise, are the ones that really stand out, as well as our Diamond Flask. Those are going to be something that help increase the scaling of our crit chance, because we're wanting to crit as much as possible, get those shocks in there, those ignites, those chills, and really make our build pop. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into our gem setups. Now, right now, we are running Anomalous Precision, and then just default, Smite, Val Discipline. In an optimal world, you can actually take Anomalous Val Discipline, excuse me, and get a little bit more deeps out of it. But at the moment, this is fine, because I believe a level 21 Anomalous Val Discipline is probably going to be like 40 or 50x. When it comes to the actual links for Spark itself, We're running a Divergent Arcane Surge to get a longer duration on that Arcane Surge whenever it procs. We're going Anomalous Inspiration to get more crit, like more crit chance, excuse me. And then, of course, our Awakened Gems. Something that's really beneficial for us right now with the current League ritual is that our Awakened Gems are actually a lot cheaper than normal. I think Awakened Spell Echoes like maybe 30x right now, which I know it doesn't sound cheap, but compared to other leagues, that's actually very cheap. I actually got pretty lucky and had one drop during one of my Cirrus kills. I want to say it was like a week ago, maybe. Anyway, when it comes to our Purities and our Grace, we're not running any alt gems on it at the moment. You could probably leverage something, especially with Grace, getting something like, I don't know, you have avoid chaos damage from hits, or, you know, something out of it other than just area of effect. Wouldn't hurt you. Something I want to point out that we're not even using, and we're actually able to get, you know, pretty decent deeps. Now, Divergent Determination. This is an expensive one. The build I'm currently have at the moment, I don't even have it yet, but it is a huge buff to survivability, because with Divergent Determination, we're actually getting 2% of evasion rating as extra armor. So that's actually another way we can continue to scale our phys damage reduction. So we're only at 72% right now, the max being 90, and you want to get as close to 90 as possible to reduce those incoming hits that you are taking, especially at being at 5.2k ES. We're also running Anomalous Dread Banner, which is going to help reduce the damage that enemies are dealing. And then Divergent Vitality, which I believe is giving us some deeps. Yeah, we're getting 4% increased damage while on full life. And being that we're taking CI, we're always on full life. So it's just, you know, another damage point for us. Our Heralds, obviously normal defaults. We're actually running Anomalous Zealotry because that's giving us crit multiplier. And as we're scaling our auras, those quality on these gems are also going to be scaled as well and getting up there. Divergent Val Haste, I actually do have for my current build. That's going to increase our projectile speed by 4%. That one's actually pretty good and actually feels really good for our build. As you can see, we're getting, you know, some pretty good cast speed here, and the projectiles themselves getting cast really fast out there. So let's go into, the rest of these are pretty much going to be from our gear. I do want to mention our amulet. It does have the grants level 22 clarity as well as the reduced mana reservation. We do take it on a simplex amulet because that it's going to give us another additional 1% to our reduced mana reserve for all of our auras. So that's another point in which we're able to tack on a whole nother aura from, because that's huge. Every 1% is a big mana reservation for us when you're doing 19 auras. So that's something I want to annotate. And like I said, it's also tacking on another aura that's not going to be taking up a gem spot, or excuse me, a gem spot. So yeah, with that, let's go ahead and get into the the overall reasoning why you're continuing to reduce your mana whenever you do have all 19 auras. So as you're going to see, we're going to get going, and then eventually you see how it's kind of stuttering, and then like my build's going forward a bit. It especially really shines whenever I pop my Val Haste. And that's because despite us having 81 reduced mana and our skill only being 50 cost, our cast speed is so high that it's continually important to continue to reduce that mana reservation. But outside of that, that pretty much covers like the overall build itself, the mechanics behind it, the gear that goes into it, our gem setups, our Ascendancy, the tree. If there's anything at all I'm missing outside of, you know, the boss kills itself, which like I said, I've killed pretty much everything. The only thing, and I guess something I can touch base on, is like mods that we can't run, and we can't do elemental reflect mods. And then something you want to steer clear of, you can still do them, but you're going to notice a DPS drop is if you run maps with players have minus X elemental resistance, because a lot of our resistance is coming, or excuse me, a lot of our damage is coming from having 90% max res. Something to be cognizant of. You can still absolutely run those, but you're gonna notice a DPS reduction in those type of maps. But elemental reflect is the only one we can't run, which leads me into the bosses, which is Uber Itziri, or honestly even I believe normal Itziri has a reflect clone as well. And since you can't really control where your little spider spark guys go, that becomes a problem, and you're gonna constantly one-shot yourself. So that's something to bear in mind. Outside of that, I've killed literally every boss. I accidentally did Uber Elder last night with Maven watching, and there was like 4 shapers in the arena. I told myself I really regret not recording it so I can showcase it here, and I also didn't want to do it again. But we were able to do it. I did die like 2 or 3 times, but we were able to do it and destroy it with what? Like I said, where my build's currently at and my Flasks not even having a Cinder Swallow or Bottled Faith at what 3 million Shaper, we were still able to do it. But yeah, if you have any questions about it, hit me up on my social medias or reach out to me on Discord. I'm always happy to talk shop and, you know, help explain something I may not have covered. If you have any input you would like to post in the comments down below, that'd be much appreciated for not only me, but other people watching the video that get some tips and advice on it. I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to watch my video, and I'll see you again very soon.